Luckily for Rishi, his Education Secretary Gillian Keegan is doing an effing good job. Who says so? Gillian Keegan. I've got some news for you, Gillian Keegan. You're not doing a good job. The government is in big trouble on this one. We'll be talking about that, in fact, right now. Let's go over to political campaigns consultant, and in this instance, I don't want to be sexist about this, but she's a mother. Rebecca Ryan. Good afternoon, Rebecca.
Hi there, Kevin.
I understand that luckily your child does not attend a school that's been constructed out of chocolate aero bars, so that's good. But this is just an incredible omni-shambles, isn't it? First of all, let me get your take. We'll play Gillian Keegan if we can, as soon as we have got that film ready. In fact, let's have a look at the self-regarding Education Secretary, who apparently is doing a fantastic job. Have a listen.
But we will get a plan, and every single one of them will be done.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just 2 moments.
Does anyone ever say, you know what, you've done a good job because everyone else has sat on their and done nothing? No signs of that, no?
No signs of that, Gillian, because you haven't done an effing good job. You're the latest. You're the 7th Education Secretary in 5 years who've basically clearly shoved this aerated concrete issue onto the back burner and tried to act like it wasn't happening. Suddenly, for some reason, just days before the term starts, all these schools are having to close, or parts of them are having to close. Extraordinary statement, I think it was yesterday or this morning, by the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, he said, well, you know, people have got to get this into perspective. 95% of our schools are absolutely fine. Now, 5% of our schools adds up to more than 1,000 schools. More than 1,000 schools built of aero bars. There's a big, big problem here. But let's talk about Gillian Keegan here. I thought an extraordinary moment of entitlement there. You know, doesn't anybody realise what a great job I'm doing? No, they don't, Gillian, because you're not doing a great job.
Absolutely, and I think this is just really indicative of the sort of culture in Westminster compared to the culture outside of the M25, at least. People will look at this and think, you know, where does she get off, you know, with that attitude? She comes straight off camera and she's straight away sort of, oh, well, what about me? Does anybody ever tell me I've done a fabulous job? Well, what about all of those children, many of them who've been impacted by COVID lockdowns and what have you, who, again, are going to have their education impacted? So, I mean, it's just absolutely astonishing that the first thing she thinks about here is herself, and when anyone's going to give her a pat on the back. I mean, that's just not how politicians should work. And obviously, you know, we've seen her apology for the language used, but not an apology for the attitude shown, or for the handling more broadly of this awful situation. But this is just the real problem, isn't it? Where we've got a government who just seem to be firefighting, but not really taking responsibility and not sort of giving any confidence that problems like this are going to be dealt with in a timely, appropriate manner and with the level of urgency that people want to see.
Absolutely. And, you know, as I say, we don't know the numbers. I mean, that's another scandal, if you ask me, that the government won't tell us which schools are affected by this. I mean, the sort of jungle telegraph is working it all out because, of course, people know when the schools are closed or not, so they're talking to each other. But the government has decided no transparency on this one. Let's keep everyone in the dark, but let's talk about how big the numbers could be. Because I talked just now about as many as 1,000 schools, probably more, could be affected by this. Some will have to be completely closed down, others partially closed down, and it definitely means that some, maybe a lot of kids, will be back to lockdownsville. They'll be studying at home online. And that is depriving them of their proper education. That is a scandal. And also, so you may have as many as hundreds of thousands of kids unable to return to school, and by extension, hundreds of thousands of parents who are furious about this, not only for their children's education, but also for themselves. You know, parents, they work the summers out. They can't wait for their kids to go back to school so they can get back into their working routine. That's the way it goes. And those people, those parents who are being deprived of that, the kids going back to school, the relief of that, but you know, the practical welcome nature of that, those people are called voters. And they will not forgive the Prime Minister or the effing good Education Secretary for this, will they?
Absolutely, they won't. And also we have to see that when something goes wrong, you know, in the wider world of sort of customer service, people don't mind so much if something goes wrong, as long as those who have responsibility put their hands up and say, you know what, I'm gonna fix this. You know, we talk about sort of, you know, large appliances in the home or whatever. If something goes wrong, we just want to know that it's going to be fixed. And having this attitude of, oh well, it's only 5%. You know, this is just not an acceptable response to a situation like this. And these are top-level politicians who are responsible for running the country, and to have this attitude of, well, where's my pat on the back? It's only 5%. This is completely the wrong attitude, and it won't win voters over, as you say. Come the next general election, people remember the response to these issues. And if they put their hands up and said, look, we had something in place, you know, the timescales were not back by, you know, whatever it was that they should have come up with. But it's only 5%, and where's my pat on the back is definitely not the answer.
Yeah, and 5%, as I said, is a hell of a lot of schools. It really is a massive number of schools. So this headache is building. I mean, I also think here, Rebecca, that the body politic has to have a serious look at the way they run governments. I mean, 7 education secretaries in 5 years. How can any of them have done a proper job? I mean, they run these cabinets on the basis, like if you're a football manager and say, it's great, I've got this player, and he can play anywhere. He's a brilliant goalkeeper, fantastic striker, amazing on the wing, good defender. He can do everything, or she can do everything. I mean, people aren't like that. And this kind of, oh, you've done education for 2 months, so you go do something else, I'll get someone else to do it. Well, education is arguably one of the, if not the most important brief in government. It's a really important job, and just treating it like a kind of temp gig, oh, we do it a couple of weeks and we'll get someone else. Gillian Keegan, to cut her a little bit of slack, is the inheritor. She's the hapless inheritor of a bunch of extremely brief education secretaries who never had the time to work out what the serious issues were that they had to confront, one of them being the schools are built of aero bars.
Exactly, but I suppose you also have to look at the relationship between the government ministers and the civil service, and why would the civil service not jumping up and down about this and saying, look, this is on the top of your list of priorities, incoming Secretary of State, this has to be dealt with. You know, there's obviously a complete disconnect. Or is this sort of a bit of politicking from the civil service to sort of hopefully see the Tory government come down? But I think in this instance that's probably not the case, given that alarm bells were raised at least 5 years ago, from what it looks like. If not, we should have been aware of it for decades. So yeah, it's just not an acceptable way for, as you say, for government to be run, for people to just be hopping from one department to the next, just shuffling them around on the board, because they think they'll do well on the media, or they'll do, it's just sort of playing politics rather than actually doing the serious business of running the country.
Like Grant Shapps, another week, another ministry. I mean, it's a joke. You're absolutely right. And as you're also right, the government was warned 5 years ago about this. Only now are they doing anything about it. Too little, too late, I would suggest. Rebecca, great to talk to you as always. Rebecca Ryan, their political campaigns consultant. Next, our very own Dr. David Bull, TalkTV presenter, of course. We're going to be talking about the weight loss drug Wegovy, which is being touted as the miracle drug that will cure Britain's obesity crisis. You know, I've been around a while. There's no such thing as a miracle drug. I'm a bit alarmed by the way we're rolling this out. Oh, everybody have it. Everybody have it. Really? I'll talk to David about that next. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan. This is TalkTV, live from the Talk